Okay, now the folks at home might see that picture a little better than you, but that bushy-haired weirdo in the top left corner is me. Believe it or not, when you go to set up for your big TED Talk and you go to find your undergraduate pictures, maybe you'll be like me, and this is the only one that will come up. So I promise I went there. I was there. I went to all the parties. I recommend the costume parties. This was Black and Blue Day or something. Hi, I'm Molly Evans, and I went to art school twice. First, I received my BFA in Fiber Arts from the Savannah College of Art and Design in 2006. And then 11 years later, I got my MFA in Fiber Arts from Indiana University. So I did it twice. And I remember saying that I would not do that, but I couldn't stay away. And now I find myself at 40 in an associate's program here at USI. I am in the program for Occupational Therapy Assisting, and my job is to tell you how it's going so far. So let's see how these two worlds are mixing. When I was 25, I was a freewheeling artist with a fresh BFA in my pocket, working a string of retail jobs, making ends meet, and Etsy had just gotten launched. I know that makes me sound like a dinosaur. Craft fairs were starting to get fun. And I had a 6-foot by 6-foot studio. It was a closet in which I was making small things to sell at the craft fairs. Now, my mother, ever the practical one, she's also kind of a dreamer. I don't want to corner her in. Here she is being a good sport when she accidentally dressed like a bottle of Tito's. I took a picture. She was slightly annoyed with me. She's a retired nurse, and she knows me better than I know myself, right? And she said, Molly, in the world of making money, you should really consider occupational therapy. And then I said, great, what is that? And she said, medical jargon, blah, blah, blah. And I got frustrated. And finally she said, I don't know, just imagine you're teaching someone to eat with a fork who's just had their fingers amputated. That is OT. And I thought, interesting, maybe, you know? But the Evans family goes all in. That is what we do. And Anna raised the bar and said, I'll buy your ticket to beautiful Orlando if you'll go to this conference. And I said, deal, I love Florida. So I went to learn about OT all in one weekend. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to an academic conference. It's intimidating, especially for a 20-something in a field they know nothing about. And they also have no idea how to do conference life, right? Like you're bouncing around from lecture hall to lecture hall, right? And somehow I kept finding myself in the sessions in which you were teaching people how to use the potty. And I thought, well, is this what OT is? Maybe not. Maybe not for me. So unfortunately, in 2010, I'd already decided not to do that by Wheels Up in Orlando on the way back to Atlanta. And that was my mistake. I recognize that now. So 4 more years go by. I'm still an artist trying to make it, and now I live in Milwaukee. This is a series that started as a prank on my very grouchy neighbor. She had a couch out for months, and I stole the cushion and I hid it. And then weeks later, I embroidered hello on it, and then, is it me you're looking for? And I cracked myself up so much that I kept doing it, like all summer. I just kept finding furniture in River West, and I never was a Lionel Richie fan, but man, was I a Lionel Richie fan that summer. And fortunately for me, he did not sue. So he did retweet it, though, and that felt like bucket list goals. Anyhow, this kind of acceptance of your work is an undeniable high, right? Anyone who's an artist knows if people get your work, it's electric, right? And in this moment, I'm thinking, maybe I'm going to make it. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the launch pad, and I should go for it, right? So I go to grad school to kind of get in the game and understand a little bit more about concept and how to build bigger bodies of work. However, grad school this is unique to me, kind of killed my love for making art. Whoops. It started a slow leak that honestly I'm still recovering from. But something about the deep research and the heavy emphasis on conceptual justification for every move that you make just really took it out of me, right? And I started making kind of sad, isolating work, very unfun, very unlike what I applied with, which honestly probably made them mad. They're like, who is this person? We invited a different person to grad school. And by the end of it, the two final pieces that I made were these quilts that were slowly folding into themselves, almost becoming invisible every 10 minutes or so through a series of pulleys and motors that were kind of hidden inside the layers. So the next 6 years, I was a good soldier. When you graduate with an MFA, you go get a teaching job. That's how it works. I taught for 3 years in Indiana and 3 years in Florida, and loved parts of it, neutral about other parts. Lots of highs and lows happen in life when you're learning how to kind of become a teacher and inspire young minds. But eventually I started having a series of questions, and those questions weren't small. They were things like, will I ever love making art again? If not, what's the point of all the creative education that I paid for? It was very expensive. Am I actually hurting my students by putting them into this complex and that spits them out at the end and doesn't support them financially, mentally, or otherwise? And finally, why was I lucky enough to be the one that got the tenure track job, right? The holy grail, as I wrote here. And the view from the top, why didn't I like it, right? So that was challenging, and leaving academia is eventually what I did. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done because I loved my students and I loved my colleagues. They'd become friends, right? But I knew I needed a big change, and I wasn't sure what I needed, so I took a year to figure it out. And because we already know this, the Evans family goes all in, right? So I just left academia and decided, hey, my mom, the consummate gardener, planted that seed 15 years ago. It seems to have sprouted. So let's go all in and teach people how to poop. If that's what it is, let's find out about it. I'm okay with it now. I've had a kid. Poop's no big deal. For the uninitiated, occupational therapy is a rehabilitation triangle that oscillates between physical, cognitive, mental, right? The goal of occupational therapy is to get someone back to a level of function that can improve their quality of life after injury and illness and that kind of thing. It covers a lot of ground. You can train to work with babies. You can train to work in hospice care. You can train to do everything in between. And so you're really exposed to almost every condition. And because of that, in your schooling, you have to learn about every condition. And my brain, bear in mind, I'm a student right now, right? My brain looks like this, all right? Like, I am buried. It's very valuable stuff, and I'm happy to hold it all, but I am, in fact, buried under it. And I can feel my brain pushing old stuff out to make room, which honestly is a good thing, sure. But even as the oldest person in the classroom, I can't help but feel like I am actually in the right place, that I'm doing the right thing that's right for me. And let's talk about why that might be. Seldom do people know that the real value of an arts education isn't just making great art. There's actually a whole set of organizing principles that help you set up your life in the way you think that follows you after graduation. Things like creative problem solving, critical thinking, deep and slow observation, and the joy of material exploration. All of these kinds of things scaffold arts training in a way that is kind of unmatched. And if you know an artist friend, you know what I'm talking about when you say, I think they can do anything with whatever junk pile they have in their garage, right? It's all truly valuable. Because in many ways, arts training itself is physical, mental, cognitive. The hours that you spend telling a visual story are painstaking, and oftentimes they involve deep repetition, and it helps develop patience. There's all these micro skills that go along with it that are incredible for artists that often go unrecognized. So then, after all that time in the studio, we present things in the gallery space to great acclaim. Wonderful. Maybe someone buys it. Excellent. Power bill, right? Maybe they don't. Worst case scenario, maybe they misunderstand it or misread it, right? Second worst case scenario, maybe they just ignore it. And then the most common thing that happens is they spend less than 30 seconds looking at it, and then they keep walking. So it's hard, right? And because of that experience as well, artists are pretty resilient to rejection. But that isolating experience didn't stop me. If you're a people person like me, you just start making work about connection, and then you force people to be there, like this. So I had a lot of collaborative work that I made people make my work with me, and it kind of solved the problem for a little while. So artists are Renaissance people, right? They have high frustration tolerance, low rejection sensitivity. They're very comfortable with vulnerability. They have to do it all the time. And in particular, they're good at looking inward and having that self-actualization to know where they are, what they're trying to say, all of that. I'd like to tell you about, really quickly, one experience in particular that makes me think about vulnerability and shared vulnerability, and it's my first weekend in graduate school. I get dolled up, not unlike today. I go to a gallery show. It's a student gallery, and there's an artist. When I walk in, I'm expecting artwork, and it's dark, and there's a lamp and a table and an artist eating eggs. I think, okay. Turns out it was trans artist Clayton Schofield, and they did a piece called Who Can Eat 50 Eggs? If you are a Cool Hand Luke fan, you know that this is actually a parody of the scene in which Paul Newman eats 50 eggs as part of a prison initiation challenge kind of thing. And it was looking at masculinity and the performance of it, right? And so here they are at a table by themselves, a lamp, 50 eggs, barf bucket, right? Because they're eating the eggs and vomiting and eating the eggs and vomiting. And the room is filled with sweat and smells of bile and eggs, and yet no one's leaving, right? They're transfixed by seeing someone having this incredibly visceral experience, extremely vulnerable, right? And an unconventional way of seeing art. So anyway, that was my real casual story about grad school and how I got initiated into the wonderful world of conceptual art where anything goes. I believe that, side note, conceptual artists are very well prepared for healthcare because they can handle chaos, right? They can make it and they can handle it. So here we have this, somehow society has decided these skills that all these artists have are unemployable. And I'd like to flip that script a little bit because what you actually have from the nearly 100,000 fine arts degrees that are conferred every year in the United States, what you actually have is an army of MacGyvers, a gaggle of optimists who are comfortable with the unknown. And I will say it right here, right now, I'm willing to bet any of my students would be comfortable in the OT classroom on day one. And consummate educator, guys, I'm going to demo it first. Don't worry. I'll try it out and see if it works. So this week was my first week of field work, and I'm working at a rehabilitation center inpatient in town. And the treatments have ranged from baking to putt-putt to standing. I've brought a patient a warm blanket for anxiety that then allowed her to actually talk to us. It was that monumental of a comfort. And I've French braided freshly showered hair and talked about life goals after rehabilitation with another patient who the day before had not been participating whatsoever. And importantly, I've been mentored by an incredible OT who breaks down interpersonal barriers every day with these patients through humor, humility, and patience. I feel very lucky. And remember, this is day 4. This is my 4th day in the field, and I'm having all of these experiences. It's a rich environment, and every day I learn so much. But at the same time, what I'm seeing in a rehab facility is that everyone has the chance to have their life dramatically altered due to health problems and accidents and that kind of thing. And it takes kind of one bad car wreck, one stroke, one gene to go haywire in your body to totally change your life. But if we experience the worst, my thought is this: may we all be so lucky to be treated by an artist, someone who has spent their lifetime not just looking, but really seeing the world for connections around them. Someone who's been taught to brandish optimism and empathy and resilience in a skeptical world. Someone who craves authentic interpersonal interactions, which bring us closer to understanding each other quickly. And may we all find healing in that connection. Thank you.